I'm from Bournemouth Uni. I'm in my third year doing forensic anthropology and crime scene investigation. I know a lot of people generally think that's what you see on the TV, but it's actually nothing like that. So basically I spend a lot of my time looking at dead bodies and looking at the investigation process behind all sorts of different crimes, how the police work, and the actual crime scene side of it. So I get dressed up wearing the white suits and collecting evidence now as well. So this is actually my dissertation project. So I'll just be talking about what non-metric traits are for any of you that don't do any kind of biological anthropology. So I specialise in osteology rather than social anthropology. So then I'll go into my research and my method, and then what I've found so far, and then a little case study. So non-metric traits, what are they? They are variation between individuals, between populations, within population. So it's the measure of biodistance, which is basically the distance between people. So it can be hereditary, so blood related, passed down through families, or environmental, so that can be affected by people themselves. So in certain countries where they find the heads and the shapes of the skull change, also the way they live. So in certain places where they don't use furniture and instead of sitting on the floor whatever, they crouch down, and that can lead to extra bone on the tibia and fibula, which you won't get from other populations that, such as us that sit on chairs and stuff. So then we have two types of traits. We have hypostotic and hypostotic. Hypostotic is where we get extra bone formation. So that could be like here with the ossicles within the sutures, and also extra spurs of bone which can come anywhere really on the body. And then hypostotic is where you have a lack of bone, so that's things like this metopic suture which hasn't fused, supraorbital notches and foramen, so have holes rather than having smooth bone. You have population-specific traits, such as in Native America, where you have teeth with shoveling. So instead of the back of the tooth being smooth, it's kind of concave. And it's very specific to North America. It doesn't really show up in Europe. So if you find Europeans with shoveling, it can be a sign that they're either mixed background or they've travelled from another place. So I'll be looking at cranial and dental traits. Dental has shown be more genetic rather than environmental. I couldn't look at the full body because there's just too many traits on the body for me to have time to do. It would have taken me years really for the amount of skeletons that I was looking at. So this is an example of shoveling. It's only really on the incisors of canines. You also get things like Carabella's cusp, which is an extra cusp on the side of the tooth, extra roots within the molars, particularly the lower molars, as they normally only have two, but you can find them with three, and additional cusps such as the second and third molars, but they would normally have 4 or 5 cusps. You can find them with 6 or 7. So then my project. So I'm comparing 2 sets of medieval remains. The first set is St Augustine-les, which is near Bristol, and Kingston upon Thames, which is near London. So I was hoping to find differences within these populations so that if you want to compare different areas, you'll be able to, if you've only got the skeleton, you'll be able to see, if they've got this particular trait, then they're obviously in this area, such as using the shoveling and the teeth of Native Americans. So I have... So here is just, this is not my picture, I couldn't upload the stuff that I've taken, but here's an example of a original metopic suture. There's a supraorbital notch just there and there. And it's really hard to see on this picture actually, and there's also an obstacle on one of these just here. This also shows one of the main problems I had in my research. I didn't have a single skull with all of their teeth, or more like that, so it was really hard to do my dental comparisons. Generally only got 1 or 2, so it meant I couldn't really compare the teeth. So my method was, I really had to know what to look for, so it meant doing a lot of research. because the traits can be so small, it can make them really difficult to see and easy to miss if you're not sure what you're looking for. So I had to make up my own record sheets. This is for my cranial traits. The one for my dental traits was twice as long because there are so many traits to look for. I had to use obviously known standards, so the work of Mendel and Lovejoy, they were able to assess the age of skeletons from how fused their sutures were in their skull. So by using the other sutures on the skull to measure their age, if they had, say, a residual mectopic suture along the forehead, then I could say, well, actually, this person's an adult, but even though this mectopic suture hasn't fused, the other ones have, so they're clearly an older adult. So basically, what have I found? Kingston remains were in very good condition. The skulls were all in one piece, but they didn't have very many variations. They generally all had suborbital notches or foramina, but they had no mectopic sutures or anything showing. But St. Augustine had a lot more on the skeletons. There was 3 out of the 14 had mectopic sutures, which is actually quite a lot considering the number of skulls. We shouldn't have any really. They also had lots of supraorbital notches and foramina, and there was shoveling in the teeth. But the problem with St. Augustine was the remains were in very, very bad condition. They were very fragmented. The bone itself was in bad condition, so I was having to piece together the skeletons before I could actually do any assessment. This made it really difficult as I didn't have full skulls. Some of the boxes would have 30 different remains in, so it became really difficult. So out of 150 skeletons, I could only assess 14. It just shows how bad it was. Altogether, there were 400 skeletons a unit. I was able to use these 2 sets of remains because it's what my uni has. We have a huge store with lots of different dig sites in, so I was able to just access them whenever I wanted, which made it easy for my research. So this is my case study, Barrio 18. Really interestingly, St. Augustine, and he was badly fractured, but the bone itself was really good condition. So I was able to piece them together, and with it I found the residual mectopic suture. So the skull had actually fractured down the suture, but there was no fusing, so I could see the suture was clearly there. He had third molars, so he was an adult, and he had his supraorbital foramina, and he had shoveling in his incisors and his canines, as well as double roots on the lower canines. So, I mean, I'd have to have a look at the rest of the skull, but it's probably, he was probably from somewhere else rather than being from around here. I mean, there was no other remains that I looked at which had the same number of traits. He probably travelled around quite a lot. So basically, my early results show the differences between the 2 areas. There are differences between Kingston and St. Augustine. I haven't finished my analysis yet, so I still more to do. I would need to look at a lot larger samples to be able to get more definitive results. So if I could get hold of more complete remains for St. Augustine that I can compare with Kingston, then I'll be able to get obviously more definitive results. There's also a lot more room for more research, so I could either do DNA analysis to find links between the remains within the communities, also looking at isotopic analysis, particularly on Smithy, so you can see where they're from. And then if you look at more sites around this country and other countries, you'll be able to find standards. So, such as in forensic work, you'll be able, if you get a skeleton and you want to know where it's from, you'll be able to use these standards. So you can find out who they are, where they're from, because it's actually quite difficult. And that's it.